I was going to mention Terry Crews and how he felt like he couldn't say anything. And so I feel like this is somewhat the same situation where it's the power and influence of his abuser or his alleged abuser. It's the fear of career retaliation and any legal consequences that may come from that. And then, like you mentioned, the public backlash, particularly since he is a man. And oftentimes we don't think about men assaulting men, even though 90% of the time when a male is assaulted, it's by another man. And so, and then also the whole social stigma that's attached to male sexual assault victims. Like if they're assaulted by a woman, it's like, oh, that's not assault. You should enjoy that. If they're assaulted by a man, then it becomes like, oh, I don't want to say it, but they're like, oh, you gay nigga or something like that because they allowed it to happen or how you allowed this to happen and whatnot. And so I think that's also part of the conversation. And you did a great job of highlighting that through some of that laughter, but you got the point across. And so I just want to provide some additional stats because one of the reasons why this is not talked about and it should be talked about. So we already know with sexual assault with women and whatnot, it's like 1 in 3 sexually assaulted, 1 in 5. But for men, it's actually 1 in 6 have experienced sexual abuse or sexual assault in their lifetime. And 1 in 4, which I believe he will fall under, has experienced some type of sexual contact or violent sexual contact. And I also would like to point out that oftentimes, 90%, once again, the perpetrator is a male. So this is male on male violence in a sex way. And so I think there's like a 13 to 16% of underreporting because just like with the women don't want to come forward because they know that they get put on trial for this basically. So men don't want to come forward either because they got that the all the ramifications of coming forward, but also the consequences of being a male who was sexually assaulted. It's like, oh, now you weak or you're this or you're that. And I think that's part of the conversation as well. It's like, I feel shame and fear, or disbelief, or how could this happen to me? And then there's the big overall myth that men cannot be victims. And I think that's something that we need to unpack as a society, that men can be victims and indeed are victims. And if we start having more of those type of conversations, I think more men will feel comfortable coming forward. Because when I first heard Terry Crews was assaulted, I was like, dang, you like 260 and you bulky and who assaulted you? Let me see the person who assaulted you. But once again, it didn't even have to be a big person. It could have been a small person, but it's the career. It was the power dynamics that was over there. And then, so I would also just like to note that nearly half of bisexual men has reported that they've been sexually assaulted or raped. Half. I'm like, wow, that's crazy. But anyways, the point that I'm trying to make is that I believe that he has a credible case because just like I believe Cassie was a victim, and while you guys may read me out for that because we had extensive conversation pertaining to Cassie through a previous episode, please feel free to check that out as well. I think that this is just another example of where we're not willing to hold powerful men because both of you guys made the statement, powerful men, Black in particular, that hold them accountable or at least give them the benefit of, hey, it probably did happen. It more likely did happen versus it didn't happen, especially considering that these people have evidence of these things happening. And so in his case, I think that the whole groping situation, I think that did happen because to be honest, I've been at a Wendy's, somebody touched me on my ass and I'm like, damn, I'm standing here, or it'd be situations and that could just be like, and he said, Tyler allegedly pinned him up against a wall and groped him and then let him go. He pat him on the buttocks and so forth. And, even in sports, technically when y'all slap each other on the ass, say, good job. That could be construed as a form of sexual assault too, because if the touch was unwanted. So I think that's something that is more likely than not happen. And that's why he probably went through a civil case because it's the preponderance of evidence versus what is the level for criminality. And in this case, it's groping, it's fondling. I think Tyler may have been on the line of like, yo, let me be aggressive in my approach towards him. And I think because he pointed out that he just got more and more aggressive in his approach because he had, he kind of was like, no, no, no. And I kept trying to put my boundaries in place. And then when my boundaries got to the point where I couldn't take it anymore, then I decided to leave because there was no course of action, recourse taking place. And I agree with Nick. With the EEOC, I've actually filed an EEOC before, and it is some bullshit. First of all, they really don't want to side with you, because ultimately it makes everybody uncomfortable. I'm just going to put it that way, and they are overworked and significantly understaffed because it's not a priority in most cases. And so I'm just going to say that I believe there's a possibility that he would win this. That 260 mil. I'm like, wow, he going for the gusto there. I don't know if it's because it's a man and he was like, I need my pride to be effective, or if that's just his starting point for negotiations. Because maybe he only want 50 mil, but he feel like if he asks for 260, they can at least start somewhere high and they can get that lower amount and to the point where he get where he needs. So that's my 2 cents on this. I'm gonna say I wish him the best. The Oval sucked ass. I actually don't like hardly any of Tyler Perry's stuff, because he really go in on the stereotypes about black men and black women, and apparently only light skinned men can't do no wrong in his universe. So I'm just gonna say that I have problems with Tyler Perry content. And while I'm happy that he's producing content and employing so many people, I just want to say that he does a lot of overgeneralization. Oval sucked. The Ruthless kind of sucked as well. A lot of sexual and all that good stuff. Most of this shit is trash. But I appreciate him for putting that trash out for me to look at it and say, hey, this is trash. So, sir, keep doing you in regards to that. I
You sound very
appreciate the
grateful.
opportunity to see this.
Guys, there's one last thing before we go to the next topic real quick,
Sure.
Jay, and I'll pass it back to you. Because here's the thing about Tyler Perry that makes me inclined necessarily to believe him, the guy, is because when you have your shit set up the way that he does, there's not a lot of transparency. Everything is all about Tyler. He writes everything, produces everything. It's not like he has a bunch of people underneath him. It's not like he have a lot of transparency to his operation for the most part. So it's a lot easier to see someone who who has this insane need to control his environment a certain type of way. Yes, he'll play Taraji, but it doesn't mean that he's going to pay everybody, because there was also Monique who had something to say in regards to how he was moving. So I get it that, yes, he positions himself as someone that deserves to be celebrated 1000% for his accomplishments and the way that he did it. But it doesn't mean he's above reproach. It doesn't mean that he has not done things that low key had turned people off. It doesn't mean that some of the tropes and the talking points that we want to talk about contributing to the black community. Why don't Quentin have a conversation with his brother, and talk about how he's also contributing to the downfall of the black community with some of his content? You know what I'm saying? Oh, speaking of which, is that an example of a person from that community who's hurting the black community? Because I know you try to make it seem like there was nobody. Whoop, there goes one, right? But I digress.
They make it seem like he got bodies too, so it's not just
Right.
one. Like he been ranking up for everybody else.
Yeah.
But listen, we don't really know, and we won't know. What happened. It's a he said, she said. Sometimes you need a third party there. I say he said, she said. That's cold. My bad. But
He said,
sometimes you need a third party there to say somebody objective, like say a white woman who's watching a video of a black woman talking about something.